Hello and welcome. My name is Nadia Denton. I'm a film curator based in the UK. On behalf of CineDB Insights, I'm delighted to introduce this interview. This piece is part of the CineDB Conversation series, a collection of in-depth encounters with film professionals from across the African continent. Today, I am joined by Meriam Deghedi, Sales and Distribution Manager for the Cairo-based MAD Solutions. Really pleased to have you with us today, Meriam.
Likewise, very happy to be here. Thank you, Nadia.
So just to start off, can you tell us about MAD Solutions and how it engages with Africa-based film professionals and filmmakers?
Absolutely, with a lot of passion. I can talk about MAD Solutions. So to try to be brief, the company started in 2009, and it was doing marketing services for films to be distributed in cinemas. And there was a natural progress of getting into distribution and selling and acquiring film. And along the way, MAD Solutions created different departments or different subsidiaries that complement everything that a film would need. So I'm handling the distribution and the acquisitions, and so everything related to the sales and distribution of films, this department. And then there's also a department for MAD Talents, that we call MAD Talents, but it's for talent management and celebrity representation. And there's also MAD Marketing and MAD Content, and PR department. So we have this whole package that a film would need. So the vocation of the company is to represent films that are not seen widely. So to offer an alternative to commercial films and Hollywood films. The kind of films that we look for or that interest us or passion us or we're passionate about are not just feature fiction films, but also documentaries and short films, which of course can be difficult to distribute in theaters, but are also difficult to sell. So the idea was to create a market, and to create this market, we worked on how to introduce it to the audience. So we work a lot on audience engagement campaigns, and we work a lot with the cinemas, and the key was to establish this trust. So it was, of course, natural that we would expand to different kind of films or nationalities, not just Arab films, but to start introducing different culture. And what we forget sometimes is that Egypt is part of the African continent and the African culture. So a couple of years ago, we decided to get more involved and get closer to the African market by participating in Durban Film Festival or in Cape Town Film Festival, and to establish more contacts and acquire films, and to see how it would go to introduce them to the Arab market.
Great, and I'm really pleased that you mentioned the fact of obviously Egypt, being, is in Africa. It is African. It straddles, the African world and obviously the Arab world. So do you think it's fair to say that in terms of African content that you'd be looking to acquire, it would generally need to have sensibilities that would culturally translate to whether it be North Africa or the Arab world, or just have particular themes that culturally would be well received by those communities?
So, of course, the easy answer would be yes, but the challenge here is to introduce not just new culture, but new ideas. Because Egyptian films that have, an innovative way of thinking that cannot always match the political discourse, they can also find some difficulties in being in being distributed and represented. And this is what we try to do. We try to always pull the strings and, test and challenge this. So we deal with a lot of constraints, obviously. It's not just about the audience. Sometimes it's censorship. Sometimes it's related to the number of theaters that we will find in a country. So what is a bit concerning about the sentence is that do film come from an idea that the director has, or do they come of pleasing a certain audience? I'm sure that we don't have a right and specific answer for this, but I would say it's a balance between both. We do films for the audience, but we also do films because we're passionate about them and we have a message to say them. And this is the distributor or the sales agent's job, is when they fall in love with the project or with the film, is how they would translate or introduce it to a certain market.
Yeah, no, that's really encouraging and great to hear. Especially as you mentioned earlier that indie films and some of the more alternative films are having a bit of a difficult time post-pandemic in terms of getting headway in such a busy commercial space. So which actual countries or territories do you distribute in, or would you say you have your theatrical releases in?
It's the Arab world countries. We call them like this because these are the countries that speak Arabic. So they are about 22 countries. And among them, we have, of course, countries from Africa, such as Sudan, obviously, but Djibouti, Comoro Island, Mauritania. So, and we have, of course, Morocco, Libya, Tunisia, Algeria. And I'd like to actually say something, a little comment about these countries is that they're all Arabic countries, but they do not speak the same dialect. So there's a huge misconception about the barrier of language, because even within the Arab world, we have it. So that's why we need to really completely try to, destroy it. What we do at Mad Solutions when we saw this, because it was really important to have, Tunisian film, not just in Tunisia, Algerian film to be represented outside of France and Algeria as well. And we're always used to having Egyptian cinema as the oldest or the most known in the region, but what we wanted to do is to expand that to other cultures as well. So when we realized that the dialect was creating a boundary between countries, we simply created Arabic literal subtitles for these films.
So what would you say are some of the common misconceptions that filmmakers have about the distribution process?
I think it's misconceptions, and also maybe it's a lack of knowledge about that, which is completely normal, because I really believe that a director should be directing. A producer should be producing, and then comes the distributor, and they should not be worried about or concerned about, of course concerned, but they should not be doing other things than what they need to be doing, because otherwise you feel that the film is losing something when you do other things. So if I can say some basic things, is that the film needs to be released in cinemas, or the film needs to be sold to a certain platform, such as Netflix. There's other alternatives than Netflix, of course, and not all films have to follow the same path. There's one rule: the film has to be seen. That's it. We make films so that they can meet their audience, whether they meet them in festivals, in culture screenings, or on a platform or in cinema. This is something that each film will have as a specific as something specific, but not all films follow the same path. So some films will not necessarily go to cinemas. They would actually be seen better if they go to platforms directly, or vice versa. And some films, unfortunately, do not go to festivals and get rejected.
Mm.
It doesn't mean that the film failed. It just means that we need to explore different audiences. Mm-hmm.
And I think you make a good point in terms of the fact that, directors should be focused on the business of directing, producers, focusing on the business of, getting the film to market.
Yes.
But what tips might you give about how filmmakers can sort of even be prepared for how they have to approach distribution, or how they should even be prepared to be talking to sales agents so that they're ready? Because whilst I do agree with what you're saying, I think sometimes the filmmakers can get so tunnel visioned that by the time it comes to having to maybe do that networking or engagement with the acquisitions people or sales agents, they're not quite ready, or maybe they're not speaking the right language, or they haven't got the right material. So very much welcome any tips or guidance that you can give.
First of all, there's a very efficient way also to have a sort of a validation that you're ready to share your script. There are a lot of funding programs, script development, and there's also co-production platforms. That doesn't mean that this is an obligation, of course. What I really like is to acquire is to discover a project when it's written, not necessarily once it's filmed. And it's not about imposing a certain artistic direction, rather than anticipating the needs and manage the expectation of whether the filmmaker or the producer. So I think that this is it's very useful to go to festivals and to meet people and to receive feedback from people that you would like to work with, and sometimes from even festival programmers. So that would be my advice, is that to receive feedback and to be open to the changes that the script will go through, because it's inevitable. A good idea isn't enough. It's the execution of the idea that really makes a good film.
Great. So that really, I suppose, relies on having a certain level of networking skills when the filmmakers are actually at the festivals, because of course we know a lot of them do attend the festivals and even the markets, but then become quite reticent or reserved about the networking. So how do you like to be approached? When you're at some of these big markets and obviously you're engaging with filmmakers, what are good ways to approach you, or that things that filmmakers should be considering when networking at events, of profile in the industry?
I personally can be approached in any way, and by email or in a festival, by hello, or even in parties. Because what everybody should know is that as much as a filmmaker is looking for a distributor or a sales agent and a distributor is looking for a good film. So yeah, festivals are a great way to put people together. Yeah. And also I know that emails can be not the easiest way to approach and everything, but having a real conversation where you can feel the passion, or you can feel the film, and pitching is always important. Pitching for 1 minute and just getting the attention of the person you're talking with about your film is always the best start, of course. And then there's follow-ups and emails and other meetings.
Now, I know that, a lot of organizations don't like to receive unsolicited scripts. So I suppose first I wanted to ask, what would you suggest filmmakers send? Would it be like a summary, a précis, a sort of EPK, like draft, of the project? And also, if someone is going to be emailing you about meeting at a market and so on, what would be key for you that should be in that email?
I think they call it a deck now.
Yeah,
presentation, yes.
Yeah.
With when you don't know the filmmaker, if it's a feature debut, it's normal that you would want to have a background on their previous works. So a presentation is always good, and it's direct to the point. So yes, when you send a script, first thing you do, if it's a script, it's usually people will keep delaying it because they have to read the 100 pages rather than just having the summary in a presentation. And it's also a great exercise for the filmmaker itself to themselves to be able to put into a very brief summary what is the purpose of their film and what they're doing, and it's usually the hardest. So it shows that they're already advanced in their way of thinking and in how they want to do the film. Yeah, so and the letter of intent for me is also very important.
Okay, that sounds good. And clearly, in light of global change and difficulties post-pandemic, there's been some impact on financing models and indeed the way films are being financed and even amounts. What would you say are some of the key changes or differences you've seen recently in terms of the financing around films, and just points that filmmakers should be aware of?
I think that, yes, the way of financing has changed, but it did not decrease.
Okay.
So I think there's more and more projects that are being taken as originals by platforms and by channels. I think there's even more ways of financing a film because we have different outlets of funding now, not just festivals and workshop and funding bodies that we find in through co-production platforms, but now VOD platforms are investing a lot in originals. So this is the most apparent change that we can really see in the way of funding a film. But also, festivals are coming back, and I think now we have even more possibilities. There's also a lot of investors, not just co-producers, that would be interested to join films. And this is something that I keep seeing more and more in the recent contracts, that you don't really have just co-producers, but sometimes you have investors that are willing to put money and to just wait for the film to be finished without really having an artistic opinion about the film. Yeah.
So basically, from what you're saying, the funding landscape is rosy. It's looking quite positive.
Yeah, I like to keep positive all the time and optimistic. I mean, I know how difficult it is to fund films. And I don't think it's not just due to the COVID or what we've been going through the past years. I think it's really related to the fact that the cinema industry has always been unpredictable.
Yeah, no, completely. And on that question of financing, have you noticed in any way particular genres that you think find it easier to attract finance?
I think that what I see is that comedies, for example, work very well in Egypt and in Saudi Arabia. Horror films work very well in Lebanon, for example. I mean, this is based, of course, on things that can vary and that can change along the way. But what is sure is that social films are always films that people want to watch and want to see. This is really the window to your culture.
And one of the things that has been, I suppose, a subject of debate, particularly for Africa-based filmmakers who are watching this, who are seeking to maybe cross over or to have more international visibility, there tends to be a focus more on the Western world, like Europe and North America. Obviously, they've dominated. Yes. What do you think the Arab world wants to see from Africa in terms of content and expressions? I mean, if you were just to put your own kind of opinion in, what do you think would be something or trends or styles even?
I would also say social films, drama, and because we've seen it before. The Turkish films or the Turkish series, they've done really exceptional viewership in Egypt, in the Arab world. And we don't speak the same language, but there are some cultures, of course, they have similarities, but they also have differences. So I think that the first step would be something, Nadia, that you said at the very beginning of our interview, is that when we find similarities in cultures, we tend, to be more to have more tolerance, to watch it till the end, and to really, you know, get into it. But I believe social life would really, social films, sorry, would really make it a difference in piercing this region.
Wonderful. And very lastly, do you have any film predictions for 2023, or are there any trends or patterns in industry that you think are going to be more pronounced in the months to come?
Globally, you mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't really have predictions, but what I can see is that we have a huge market that is emerging, which is the Saudi market. And I think it will make a lot of difference, and it will create a lot of opportunities for films to be financed in a different way, not different way, rather than in a different place. Mm-hmm. And different place means that they will touch a different audience. And and Saudi is a country that is investing a lot in cinema technologies, a lot in their audience, and a lot in festivals. So I think this will also have a positive impact on the cinema industry in the region, and the shootings of films. And not a prediction, but maybe a news, is that for the first time in history, we see a Yemeni film selected at Berlinale this year. And this is something that is just beautiful, you know, to see that more countries are being represented, not just in festivals, but in cinema. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Lovely. Well, that's a ideal note to end on. Very grateful for all of the insights that you shared with us today. It's been a really informative conversation. And I think there's a lot for the filmmakers watching this to reflect on, particularly in terms of how they may seek to interact with the Arab world, which is something certainly very unusual. I think our outlook tends to be more towards the West. But like you said, there are opportunities emerging in unusual places. So yeah, thank you so much once again, Meriam.
Thank you.
Hopefully some of the individuals watching this will be able to reach out and engage. So they can just simply send you an email. And be
Absolutely.
That's wonderful. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.